Thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. To some other stories. Now, despite a conclusive verdict of the Supreme Court on the outcome of the 2020 elections, the minority in Parliament is pushing for a parliamentary investigation that will thoroughly review the elections. Now, according to Tuesday's order paper of Parliament, 5 minority MPs, led by Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak and the Bolga East MP, Dr. Dominic Ayene, wants the bipartisan committee to be chaired by an NDC MP to inquire into, among other things, how the EC carried out collation of the election results. Now, we'll go through point by point what the NDC MPs are seeking. But first, listen to one of the 5 MPs who are pushing for this motion, MP for Buem, Kofi Adams. He says, despite the verdict of the courts, an independent review of Parliament is necessary.
Well, these are 2 different things. The conduct of the elections, the challenge of the outcome of the elections in a court for a court to determine the outcome and processes that led to the outcome. What we are doing now is for us to raise issues as to what was brought before Parliament in the form of a bill for a constitutional instrument to be passed, which was laid before Parliament, that's the CI 127, which was passed and gave clear indications as to what should happen when and how, the format in which it should happen. We observed on the ground, after training agents and persons, that this is going to be the structure, this is going to be the process, this is going to be what will be happening, to be fed with a different schedule and a different form to be used on the day of election. So it demands that a proper investigation is done on that one. 2, the Electoral Commission declared and kept changing results, not once, not twice, not thrice, but about 5 times. And it demands that we probe into this.
But that part was before the Supreme Court. The court said the court were within its right to have done that.
That is the Supreme Court speaking. This is Parliament. This is Parliament. We are independent of the judiciary. We want to go into the matters so that tomorrow we don't have a repeat of that situation. Can you imagine if this had happened in another country? Or it had happened possibly with a flag bearer that has a certain violent orientation, that results is declared, then it keeps changing and changing and changing. Regional coalitions keep changing and changing.
Now, Kofi Adams also insists their request to have the committee chaired by a minority MP is not far-fetched.
And there are video evidence to that. And so the evidence will be provided. It is for the EC to come and tell us how that happened. If they didn't, what was their investigation? What report did they submit? How did a private person secure the insignia of EC to be able to print those ballot papers and thumbprint them, and why it happened only in Ashanti?
There may be mischievous people who can have the EC's insignia, their logo and other things, just print it and use it for the sake of preventing trouble and just...
EC come to tell us that when the committee is put in place for them to go into such matters, let them come and tell us how it happened and whether they took steps to investigate it. And if they did, what was the report? Why this report was not shared with the public? So it is very important. These questions we've raised in our motion is very critical, very important to the sanctity of our elections.
You also want to establish what the causes of the disturbances and the electoral violence were. You had previously tried to do that. You were not successful to try and get a committee to look into some of the electoral violence in Ododudu and the rest. You are smuggling this into this motion again, some would say. And the majority at the time wanted to also establish a committee that will look at violence that has plagued elections from 2000 till date. some will say you are flogging a dead horse on this particular issue. The election is gone. Let's try and make amends. Let's not repeat the things that will cause some emotional distress to the families of the victims involved in this.
I'm sure you are suggesting that autopsy is not necessary when you lose a relative in any situation. Why do we do autopsy? We do an autopsy of the dead, possibly to find out causes, so that if some of those causes are avoidable, it doesn't repeat itself. So that is exactly what we are seeking. If the institution that is supposed to do that, we are not seeing much from them, it doesn't mean that Parliament should also sleep on its responsibility. So
you also want the committee to be chaired by a member of the minority. Some will say that even worse in the case, the majority would never allow that.
Why shouldn't they? But we have committees in Parliament by establishment that are chaired by the minority.
Well, let's go to Parliament now. Kweku Asante joins us live via Zoom. Kweku, first of all, run us through point by point what the motion seeks to achieve.
So, Ernest, before we do that, let me say that Kofi Adams is joined by 4 of his colleagues in moving for this motion to be discussed by Parliament. Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak, Chief Whip, also Dr. Dominic Ayine, Bernard Ahiafo, and Zuwaira Mohammed Ibrahima. These are the 4 people. You look at the 9 key issues that the minority want this committee to look at. Very, very elaborate and all-encompassing. They want to start by first looking at all related matters for the 2020 election. And so to look at all these issues, they also want to inquire into the circumstances that led to the use of form other than the statutorily provided statement of pool form. We know that when the election was concluded, the MDC in particular had some issues with the forms that were deployed by the Electoral Commission to record the election.
Yeah.
They did raise those objections. The Electoral Commission did not pay heed to that. It formed part of the basis of the case they filed at the Supreme Court. Much did not come out of that. We know that the court threw out that petition.
We saw that play in court when the witnesses were called Pesa White and, of course, his colleague who were called via Zoom.
So this has also been repeated in this new private members motion that they are moving. The third is to ascertain the quantity of ballot papers printed and the discovery of ballot papers at InnoLink printing press. Some have asked, what are the specific issues here? Because the EC have always explained that they overprint for emergency and exigency, so that if people go to the poll and, for instance, they spoil their ballot paper, they can ask for another one. The minority want a probe into that also. They want also to inquire into allegations.
We seem to have a freeze there in the connection to my colleague Kweku Asante, who was running us through the 9-point, paper or motion, I should say, private members motion by the minority. Kweku, we lost you briefly there. Well, we seem to have lost him again. We'll re-establish contact. When we do have him, we'll bring you more on these, these claims being made by the minority in their motion. But you can find details also on myjoyonline.com. Let's do something.